Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the May 2020 meeting of the Omaha Public Power District Board of Directors. Joining us, these are unquestionably unprecedented times, and I truly hope that you and your loved ones are staying safe and healthy. I want to thank everybody at OPPD involved in preparing for this week's board meetings. We had our all-committee meeting on Tuesday using WebEx events. I think it's fair to say things went pretty smoothly. We had a what was that, a 7.5 hour meeting. So we were committed to the cause and stuck with it the whole time. I ask that we all exercise the same patience and flexibility today, as was demonstrated on Tuesday as we navigate today's meeting. Mo, could you get to slide 3, please? Is that where we need to be? Okay. As a reminder to board members, senior management, and OPPD staff, please mute your microphones. Looks like everybody's doing a good job there. That'll help reduce background noise. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You are in listen only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. If you are disconnected from the WebEx conference, we ask that you just rejoin in the same manner as when you originally joined. That goes for everyone, just in case board members, public, anyone gets kicked off, just join in the same manner that you did as you joined. Mr. Burke, President and CEO, we are ready for the safety briefing, sir. You're on mute.
Just the muteness, and sometimes I forget. So on the screen that you all may be able to see are the 10 actions that every Nebraskan should be taking to slow the spread of COVID-19. For those of you that aren't on the visual side and just maybe on the phone, stay 6 feet away from each other, stay home as much as you can, wear a cloth face covering in public. I just got three more off the internet yesterday. Work from home, hold conference calls. That's all we've been doing here at OPPD, primarily our conference calls for most of the certainly senior team. A lot of work going on at OPPD out in the field, and we're also asking them to practice social distancing as well. Make sure that you pay attention to yourself for fevers, for shortness of breath, for coughs. Just make sure you're aware of your own personal health. Wash your hands with soap and water. Mine are cracking because of Clorox wipes and all kinds of other sanitizers. Make sure you do wash your hands before you eat. Cover your nose or mouth with a tissue or your sleeve when you cough if you need to. And just make sure you disinfect not just your hands, but also objects and surfaces, counters, handles, doorknobs, tabletops, remotes, keyboards as often as you possibly can. Practice these 10 actions. We can slow the spread of COVID-19. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let's talk about guidelines for the conduct of this meeting. The regular board meeting will follow the agenda made public on oppd.com, and it is being conducted via WebEx events and is being recorded. Our board meetings have public comment periods on the agenda. Comments made by all parties during the meeting are in fact part of the official public record. Following board discussion on each pending matter, I will ask for public comment before bringing the matter to a vote. Also, prior to adjournment of the meeting, you will have an opportunity to comment on any matters of OPPD business. So, slide 8, Mo, if you folks, if you wish to speak, there are 2 options for how you can notify us. Option 1, which is being displayed now, involves sending the meeting technology host a message using the chat feature, simply stating that you wish to speak.
Chair Muty.
Yep, hop in there, host, and walk us through it, please.
This is the host, so if you have any questions, I'll be reaching out to you guys. For those who have joined us using a computer or WebEx mobile app, you will find a button in your WebEx interface to open the chat panel. Once opened, you may send your message into the meeting host, which is me. Requests to provide comments will be relayed to the corporate secretary for recognition during the public comment section.
Okay. And let's take a look at option 2 for offering comments. It's being displayed now. It involves the hand raise feature. Go ahead, host.
Okay. WebEx allows for attendees to virtually raise their hand. We would ask that this feature be used to indicate to OPPD that you wish to be recognized to provide comments. You will find the hand raise button in the participant list panel as displayed on this slide. Once you have been recognized, please press the hand raise button once again to virtually lower your hand.
Corporate Secretary Mo, do you want to talk a little bit about those folks on WebEx who have only joining via telephone? So in other words, those first two options aren't an alternative?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Moody. For those who have dialed in using a telephone, what we will do is we can see your area code and the first three numbers of your phone number. We will call out your number, unmute you, and ask you if you wish to make a comment. If you do, you will be allotted 3 minutes to do so. And if not, we will put you back on mute and we will go through this similar process for each moment in time during this meeting where we will take public comment.
Thank you, Mo. Just a quick check-in. I believe I see one call-in user. Is that correct at this point?
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, slide 10. So I'll allow plenty of time at each opportunity for public comment for members of the public to provide notification. When I call on a member of the public to speak, our meeting technology host will unmute your microphone. Before commencing your comments, I suggest you first affirm that we can hear you. And then second, please state your name and address as always, and state the name of any organization or person you are representing. Organizations should choose one representative to speak on their behalf if possible. Each individual will be allotted 3 minutes per matter pending at the discretion of the board. To assist you, we will display a timer to ensure each member of the public receives a consistent amount of time. Ms. Henners will signal you when 30 seconds remain, as well as when time is up. If you would, please direct your comments to me. I will either respond to you directly or defer response to another board member or officer of the district. If you have written materials, please email them to Ms. Henners at mfhinners, that's mfhinners at oppd.com. She will receive them on our behalf. Ms. Henners, will you please take the roll call?
Yes. Wagner?
Here.
Kavanaugh? Director Kavanaugh?
Here. I have a little trouble with my mute button. Here.
Thank you. Director Gay?
Here.
Director McGuire?
Here.
Director Mulhoff?
Here.
Director Moody?
I am here.
And Director Williams?
Here.
Director Yoder? Thank you. Announcement regarding public notice of meeting. Notice of the time and place of this meeting was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing same in outlets newsletter and on oppd.com, by displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza since May 8, 2020, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on that same date. A copy of the proposed agenda for this meeting has been maintained on a current basis and is readily available for public inspection in the office of the district's corporate secretary. Additionally, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection on oppd.com. The board consent action items are as follows. Item 6, ratification of the decision to conduct the May board meetings virtually due to the COVID-19 public health situation. Item 7, approval of the March 2020 comprehensive financial and operating report, April 2020 meeting minutes, and the May 14th, 2020 agenda. Item 8, retirement fund investment manager selection, resolution number 6372. Item 9, Sarpy County 2 engine repair, permission to negotiate and award contract, resolution number 6373. Item 10, Nebraska City 2 reheater upper bank replacement, materials contract award, resolution number 6374. If there are no corrections, changes, or additions to the consent agenda items, I need a motion and a second to approve the items.
So moved. Second.
And who was it that second?
Ann McGuire.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. As mentioned, we discussed these items at the committee meeting on Tuesday, so the board will not be making any comments today. But at this time, I would like to ask if any members of the public have any comments on these consent agenda items. If you would like to make a comment, please send a chat to the meeting host or use the hand raise feature in WebEx. Okay, I am not seeing any raised hands. Host, do we have any chat requests for comment?
At this time, we do not.
Okay, and then call-in attendees only. Still see only one, is that correct?
Yes, that's all I see as well.
It's
All right.
call in user 8. I can't see the number right now.
I believe it's a 402-830 number.
Lauren, do you want to unmute that person and I can ask if that person would like to make a comment?
Yep. You're unmuted.
Hi, would you like to make a comment on the consent agenda items?
No comment. Thank you.
Okay.
You.
Thank you. Okay, I think unless there are any new chats and I don't see any hand raises, that concludes the public comment period. Ms. Henners, could we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Bogner,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Gay,
Yes.
McGuire, Mulhoff, Moody,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Yoder.
Yes.
Motion carried. Agenda item 11 is SD3 Access to Credit Markets Monitoring Report Resolution number 6375. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors accepts the SD3 Access to Credit Markets Monitoring Report in the form as set forth on Exhibit A, attached hereto and made a part hereof, and finds OPPD to be sufficiently in compliance with the policy as stated. Need a motion in a second.
I move that we accept this resolution.
Second.
All right. I think that we would like to invite VP Fernandez to walk us through the SD3 monitoring report. Javier?
Certainly, Director Bogner. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. And I am going to admit that we didn't have a conversation about, do you want me to go through the whole slide deck or just a summary? I should have
I
asked.
think a summary will be fine. And then we can make some discuss as a board and hear public comment.
Sounds good. So Ms. Henners, if you can advance the slide.
I don't believe we have any.
Do we have another slide? Oh, we don't have the
Sorry,
slide.
Javier, the only slide I put into the board
Okay,
presentation
great,
is our
perfect.
resolution.
Great, perfect. So
And
let me
I
just,
thought I saw something before.
well, I'll summarize these as best as I can. So as I reported to the board of directors on Tuesday's committee meeting, our SD3 Access to Credit Markets asks us, OPPD as a whole, to maintain to achieve a low and flexible cost structure, maintain financial ratios and targets to ensure efficient and cost-effective access to the credit markets. And as we've demonstrated time and again, that's a very, very important pillar of how we build our budgets and how we operate the organization. One of the most important things that we do, probably the most important financial ratio that we always keep in mind while we build our budget is to keep that 2x debt service coverage ratio. We have a covenant to maintain at least a 1.4 debt service coverage ratio for investors. we set the bar even higher for the financial health of the district, and that's at 2 times that service coverage. And so we've demonstrated that time and again, and that is, in my opinion, one of the most important metrics that we have to maintain our fiscal strength. We've demonstrated that we've done that very well in previous years. That's how we built our 2020 budget. We've also been decreasing our debt to asset ratios, going from up to 66% back in 2016 down to, we expect this to be at 56% in 2020. That is, for every dollar of assets we own, we will owe 56 cents on that dollar. That's a good metric of financial health. We improved our days liquidity. This is part of the resolution that was approved by the board last month that gave us the authority to expand our line of credit agreement, and we executed that line of credit for $75 million a few weeks ago. That puts our days liquidity as of today, as of today, of 245 days liquidity on hand. That's what I reported on Tuesday. We continue to maintain our competitive position by us not raising general rates, having our general rate increase our general rate freeze period 4 years in a row. That has continued to help hold our competitive position in the region. We believe preliminary estimates are that we are about 8.9% below the regional average. These are preliminary rates, and as I mentioned on Tuesday, we will talk more about our competitiveness in detail during next month's board meeting when I present the SD2 rates monitoring report. Continue to have high credit ratings from Moody's at AA2, from Standard & Poor's at AA, all stable. We're very proud of that. It's not an easy achievement, and lots of work goes into that, and still the investment community looks at us in very good way, putting us in one of the highest rating categories. And as I mentioned earlier, a couple of days ago, this pandemic has put a different light on the value of our financial solvency, our financial strength. We've always known it's important to have it. It's probably more important to have it when times are not great. And during the financial turmoil that the world saw a few weeks ago, and that we're still recovering from, having this credit quality has been incredibly important for us to be able to pick up the phone and call financial institutions to continue to finance our operations and extend our commercial paper programs. And it has been incredibly important. Had we not had this credit quality, we would have been in a world of hurt a few weeks ago. The availability of investment opportunities and willingness to invest in our commercial paper would have been significantly reduced. So I cannot stress more the importance of our financial condition, especially in times like this. Going into this pandemic crisis with such strong financial reserves, cash reserves, measured by days liquidity and days cash on hand, has been incredibly important as well. And something that I also mentioned on Tuesday is the rate restructure that we went through a few years ago that has been controversial with some members of the public. I think this is one where as residential customers go home and they're spending more time at home and they're consuming more energy, they will not see a commensurate increase in their bills, because more of their bill is fixed. It has provided stability both for the ratepayer and for the utility, where we are recovering more of our fixed costs under that fixed charge, and it allows a peace of mind for customers as they increase consumption to not experience a significant increase in their bill. So all in all, very proud of what the utility has done, and I'm very proud to present this monitoring report for the board's consideration today.
All right, thank you, Javier. I don't think we can underscore enough the strength that the financial position that the district has will lend us now in these times of pandemic, as well as into the future as we continue to grow and expand our services and to continue to provide, the essential services that our community certainly relies on to power itself. I'd like to offer this time for other board members to make comments.
Colleagues, any additional comments? I don't see any hands up. I'll just simply say, again, we had a good conversation on Tuesday. I'll express gratitude for all of the work that everyone does on this front. Coming out of a pretty significant flood in 2019 and then going into a pandemic, which has just changed everyone's world. The financial stability that has been created by the organization is really exceptional, and it puts us in a great position to weather a lot of what's going to come at us as a result of the pandemic. So thanks to everyone involved. This is really great work. Okay, I don't see any hands, and I assume that we're good on comments from the board. So we have an opportunity for public comment on SD3. I'd like to ask if any members of the public have any comments on this action item. If you would like to make a comment, please send a chat to the meeting host or use the hand raise feature in WebEx. I do not see any hand raises yet. Any host, any chat messages?
I don't have any chat messages yet.
Okay, let's check in with our call-in user.
No comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. One last check, assuming no chats, I don't see any hand raises. That concludes the public comment period. Ms. Hitters, would you call the roll, please?
Wagner,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Gay,
Yes.
McGuire,
Yes.
Mulhoff,
Yes.
Chair Moody.
Yes.
Director Williams had to step away momentarily. Director Yoder. I'm sorry, Director Yoder.
Yes.
Thank you.
An emphatic yes, a glorious yes. Yes.
We appreciate it. Motion carried.
All right. So that concludes the action portion of our board meeting, but I can't begin to describe how excited I am for the remainder of our board meeting. Tim, I think your president's report has some competition this time around.
Good.
So we've got 4 items on the agenda, the first 2 of which are kind of tied together a little bit, but very excited to start sharing with the public a little bit of the Strategic Vision 2050 work that is just getting started. And then obviously the pathways to decarbonization is something that carries a lot of interest on the part of a lot of people. So Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you run with it.
Great. Thank you very much, Chairman Moody. As we have talked before, either in the committee meeting or in the board meeting, our intention is to come back to the board and also to allow the public the opportunity to hear kind of what we're doing around our strategic visioning and strategic initiative. And so I'll be turning it over very shortly to Scott Foch to kind of give a broad perspective around the work we're doing, not just around the strategic initiatives that we have talked about before with the board, but also this 2050 visioning process that we are engaging on is about what OPPD will be like in 2050. And Scott will kind of give a broad brush on that topic. And then next, Mary Fisher and Jeremy Bowers will do a deeper dive around the pathways to decarbonization and some of the work that we're doing. We've talked about it broadly, and we're going to begin to dive down a little deeper to give you a context on kind of the work that we have ongoing right now with this strategic initiative team. And then I will tee up after my director's report, also a really important time in the district's work. Mary Fisher will also talk about our Fort Calhoun Station final spent fuel moves that occurred this week. I'm not going to steal that thunder. Matter of fact, we kind of pulled these out of the president's report so these individuals could speak very specifically about these items. And then I will also do the president's report as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott Foch to begin to talk about the Strategic Vision 2050 and the initiatives update and kind of our plans going forward. So Scott, if you could do that, that would be great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you and good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here today. And as you can see, Strategic Vision 2050 and initiative updates is what we're focusing on. And ultimately, I think trying to answer some of the questions that I know both the public and the board have is, well, how are we bringing all of this together? So really that's the focus of the conversation. If I were in the auditorium, you would see next to me Robert Kaminsky, who I'm pleased has joined OPPD as Director of Strategic Planning. He's a transitioning Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel, spent 26 years in the Marine Corps, really focused on strategy development, deployment, logistics planning on a global perspective, and is certainly here now to help us as a utility bring all of that together in such a thoughtful and meaningful way. He is in the attendee group today, and I just wanted to acknowledge him. Next slide, Ms. Henners. One of the things I want to acknowledge is, what is the role that the board and the senior team play with regards to strategic planning? And the board spells it out really well, and I think clearly in BL1. And I've highlighted a couple of important words, mainly that the board coordinates with the President and Chief Executive Officer to identify and define the vision of OPPD and mission of OPPD and establish the strategic directives, which are the policies that we review on an annual basis, if not more frequently, like SD3 today. And also the CEO shall lead in coordination with the board the development and implementation of OPPD's vision, mission, and strategy. Since this was passed in 2015, what's been really interesting to note is the evolution of what that word coordinate means. And I think that the clarity that the board has taken in terms of the strategic directives and providing something around which it's even increasingly more helpful to organize the full organization. Case in point would be the change of SD7 environmental stewardship and pointing us very clearly to the direction of 2050 and net zero carbon by that time. Strategic planning ultimately is about aligning the organization behind a cohesive vision of the future. And that means the entire organization. And it also means making it very clear and transparent to those the organization serves. So if we go to the next slide, I want to highlight a little bit about our perspective and how all of this comes together. I'd mentioned earlier about the strategic vision. And really what SD7 provides us a unique opportunity, I think, to line around. But it's more than just net zero carbon. Ultimately, we want to ask ourselves the question, what is OPPD? What is the utility of the future? And what might that look like in 2050? By answering that, we have an opportunity to really clearly align and connect the strategic initiatives, broad enterprise initiatives, the business unit plans, core business, things that we're focusing on, as you all know right now through COVID-19, of just keeping the lights on. And making sure that the foundation for all of that is aligned and respective and connected to the strategic directives and any guiding principles that the board provides to us. If we have this pyramid working and the relationships working right through our processes, through our discussions, through how we engage the board and ourselves internally, what you see to the right are some blue arrows. What we're looking at some point in time using this pyramid is to be able to align and develop longer term strategic plans, if you will, as part of one larger plan. 2025, what does this mean for us in 2025 and 2030 and 2040? These conversations would be dynamic and ongoing. They would evolve as we learn more, as we know more about the industry, and as you as board have an opportunity to talk and actually continue to evolve in the dynamics of boards and board elections and all of that. At the very bottom of this, what you see are red arrows. Those red arrows point to the types of environmental trends we're monitoring all of the time. Our intention is to look and ensure that we are able to bring the external environment internal to our considerations. We've done that over the past many years, but this represents how that feeds into those considerations. And ultimately, as we kind of align these routines and think through the organizing mechanisms, whether it be budget planning, resource planning, conversations around the directives, we have an opportunity, I think, to create a strong, unified, and consistent message, of a very cohesive message, if you will, between the board and senior team. Ultimately, strategic planning is about figuring out what you're going to do, yes, and also what you're not going to do, because you have limited resources. And so you want to be able to make sure that the structure that you create here really allows for the alignment of those resources in the most meaningful way. And you see those aqua arrows behind: budget, technology, workforce. So this is kind of the organizing view that we're taking. We're stepping into this slowly. Our first step around this pyramid and thinking towards Vision of 2050 is to actually have a very thoughtful and engaged discussion with the board and with the public over the coming year around what it is that OPPD 2050 should and would look like. So in the coming months, you'll learn more. We'll be engaged, the board will be engaged, and the public will ultimately be engaged in this discussion. We're committed to making sure that all we serve have an opportunity to engage in one way or another around the development of this vision. I also want to acknowledge, as we go to the next slide, and Mo, if you could advance, thank you. As you know, back from June through October, we talked about specific strategic initiatives. The 5 initiatives that we have active and working today within the organization are really aligned around an initial kind of 10-year vision before we decided to stretch it out to 2050. And you can see there's the pathways to decarbonization. There's CEF, stands for Customer Engagement of the Future. ES and EM is the Electrical System and Modernization. There's the Technology Platform Charter, or the Technology Platform Initiative, and there's a Workforce, a Transformation Initiative. When we brought those two, these were very thought through concepts that had initial aspects of chartering. But ultimately, it became very clear to us as we were stepping into that next phase of detailed planning, it was going to be important for us to establish a real clear perspective around scope, around milestones, around interdependencies, around the amount and number of resources involved. We needed to deconflict all of that to make sure that we were able to prioritize and execute these initiatives in a meaningful way. As we move from the chartering, and the green arrows represent those where we have charters today, and the yellow ones, we're still working on those just to make sure we can deconflict everything. We're moving into that next level of planning and execution in order to deliver what we need to deliver with regards to those specific initiatives. This will all be happening in parallel to the development of the 2050 plan, so we'll be working very closely to make sure those initiatives align to that. And ultimately, we will be creating those broader plans for 2025, 2030, and 2040. Another thing I want to highlight on this is the stars. What we're talking about here is having a cadence. Once we have established this portfolio of well-resourced, milestone-driven initiatives, we want to ensure that we're providing a regular update to the board to signal our progress. Are we keeping on track? Where might we need help? These types of questions that would naturally surface as you're managing such a large body of work as these initiatives. Also, what you'll see today is the first debrief, really, of one of those charters from one of the initiatives. That's what Mary's intending to walk through. And we will provide you that type of communication. It may evolve a little bit. We may find today, gosh, When we said coordinate, this is a little too much information, or it might not be enough, or we'll figure that out and we'll work through that and work closely to understand what works and what doesn't, so that we can continue to evolve that process as we move through the subsequent initiatives and actually further in future updates for the strategic plan. I'm wanting to hopefully provide some perspective of how this really begins to come together, how the processes and pieces interrelate. And this will be an ongoing discussion and conversation. So at this time, are there any questions? And if they're not, I will turn it over to Mary to begin to walk us through the pathways of decarbonization.
Board members, any questions? I don't see any hands up. I'll pause a moment. I'll ask one. I'm just kind of curious. You talked, Scott, about. So first, let me just say how excited I am about this work. Really excited about kind of how we're thinking about it and the work that's going to unfold as a part of this. You mentioned that there will be engagement opportunities on the road. I know that we don't know exactly what those are, but I'm wondering if you can perhaps talk a little bit in the abstract about what the public might expect to see, especially given that we've got stakeholder outreach to do with respect to the decarbonization initiative and any number of other things where we're pretty consistently and constantly engaging the public now. But any color that you can add around what that might look like?
Yeah, I would just initially say that we've begun to have the conversation around the stakeholder outreach for here, but the others, and the importance for us through that process to make sure that they're well aligned and it's very clear to the public as we engage them that we've eliminated any opportunity for real confusion about the relationship between those different touch points. Right. We are still working the very specifics, but we are taking a look at probably 2 or 3 touch points over the next year in one way or another to go out and to gather feedback from different constituencies and ultimately make sure that we're doing an outreach as well as we can to all of those that we serve. Sure. I will acknowledge that Lisa Olson and her team, being accountable ultimately for stakeholder engagement, will provide sort of a macro perspective around that and make sure that it all comes together in a most meaningful way. And of course, everyone has a real passion around it. I know that Tim has been a huge champion for this, and I don't know, Tim or Lisa, if you have any additional comments around that at this point in time.
Scott, I'll just take a quick shot here and just to say, with each one of these strategic initiatives have some level of customer engagement, and how we do that, whether that's online, especially under certainly the COVID kind of 19 parameters we have here. But we've been able to gather through our power panel and through other kinds of remote ways. I'll talk about in the President's report the state of the utility and how we're using that as an opportunity to gain feedback and perspective. And I think you'll see us use more online and automated ways to get customer feedback and input, as well as our power panel, as well as ongoing kind of outreach, a variety of customers, to make sure that the feedback we're getting is really representative across our whole service territory, and really understand what those differences may look like across our service territory. So the team, the customer team, the corporate communications team, all the sponsors of these strategic initiatives, and certainly myself as the sponsor for the Strategic Vision 2050, is really aligned around making sure that we find ways to gather that customer input, and certainly board employee input, all of our partner inputs across the broad OPPD footprint.
Tim, this is Lisa. I just want to add, we're also really excited about the new platform that we're going to be launching during the next few weeks. And so it's more than just about utility, but how do we engage communities around all of these issues and so forth. And so the team has been doing remarkable work, and we're really excited about that. We'll have a huge launch of that, and the board will be right on board with that. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that additional clarity. That's super helpful. Thank you. Board members, any other questions or comments?
believe Janice has a question.
Thank you. I just, I want to say that I'm really excited about this kind of movement towards a North Star, a strategic direction that's far enough in the future that it really makes sense. I'm assuming that at some point we'll have some clear understanding of what plans, district level initiatives and strategic initiatives and how those really build on each other. And I'm thinking that this happened in a committee part of, maybe in governance committee, that you talked about how those really build. And we don't need to go into that necessarily today, but I'm really hoping that we can have some clarity and some good understanding of how those levels of the pyramid really do build on each other and how those are defined.
Absolutely. And, you know, I would just offer up at this point as a narrative, but there is a more detailed conversation. A strategic initiative for us right now are strictly these 5. But there's other and very significant efforts that are happening across the district, and some orders of magnitude may be even larger, that fall into what we're calling enterprise initiatives right now because of their scope and order of magnitude. Mary's involved in many of them, for example. So you will hear more about those, and we'll absolutely effort to make that distinction clearer. So thank you for that question, Director Mulhall. And Director Meyer,
and I think we'll provide greater clarity on examples of what those district-wide initiatives are. You've certainly seen the strategic initiatives, but we'll begin to break those down a little bit to give you examples of what they look like in the future. Thank you.
I believe Director Williams has his hand up.
Yeah, Scott mentioned the term enterprise initiatives, and in the pyramid version, I see district level initiatives. I'm curious, as Janice pointed out, the clarification of how different planning activities work together and how one set of decisions or one set of input feeds into the other. So first of all, Scott, could you clarify the district level initiatives, and if that is what you meant by enterprise initiatives, or if there's another box on either of these charts that we should be looking to understand. I understand. I realize that this is a very high level overview, but just the number of terms that are now being used as strategic initiatives, strategic directives, strategic vision, enterprise initiatives. I think that having some clarity both for the board in policy decisions and for the public in understanding how the input and decision-making process will happen. And I realize that was that it's been covered that will be happening over the next several quarters as listed in the table here. But if you could clarify that part right now, Scott, and then I'll look for the rest of it. Thank you.
Yeah, first, thank you very much for that question. First of all, yes, when I said enterprise, that's what we mean by district level. And honestly, we've gone back and forth in terms of having a naming convention. So they're still sometimes a little bit confused. The reality is that there are things that require enterprise effort, but more of a formal name for them is district level initiatives. If it is helpful, I think we can certainly craft some type of more detailed definition of each of these levels versus going into it today. I know we don't have a lot of time, but everything does ultimately feed together and there is interconnection. And so we're happy to do perhaps even a 101 at one point in time in terms of strategic planning and how these things work together. They're pretty standard components of strategic planning and then aligning operational and organizational planning to support that. So
yep,
I do that.
Definitely not asking for today, but just as we look forward and some information that can be distributed so that stakeholders and customer owners can also be aware of how these terms are used so that when they hear us use them at board meetings or in other places, that they can be familiar with what that means. I think that will be very helpful. And again, looking to the future, I understand that will be coming. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Director Williams.
Okay, I see. Janice, you've got your hand up. I assume that's a relic from your earlier question. I don't see any other hands from board members. Which means, thank you, Scott. You want to go ahead and turn it over to Mary?
It's my pleasure. I will tee it up and turn it over to Mary to walk through pathways to decarbonization.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. This evening, I have Jeremy Bowers, who is the program manager for decarbonization. Jeremy is going to walk through the program as we've put it together. There are 4 different and distinct pieces of the decarbonization program that we're going to talk to you about this evening. One is headed up by Colton Kennedy, which is our energy portfolio. Business operations is headed up by Jessica Delatorre. Our customer segment is headed up by Paul Fortney, and the community segment is headed up by Russ Baker. Jeremy is going to go through this presentation and identify to you what those pieces and parts and how they come together and how they work together. And then at the end of this, we'll be happy to take any questions. So with that, Jeremy, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mary. I'll start just by per the request, making sure my audio is working. So can everybody hear me? All right, very good. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Scott, for teeing that up and really how decarbonization supports that larger strategic vision. My name is Jeremy Bowers, as Mary said, Program Manager of Decarbonization. And you've expressed how you're excited to hear about decarbonization, and I'm really excited to talk to you about it today. This most important initiative. You'll find out that there are a lot of people working on this initiative today across the district, and there's even more here in the coming months. And I feel confident speaking for them and for the organization that we truly appreciate the opportunity really to be engaged in such meaningful work. We're thinking about 2050, and we're thinking about this kind of massive goal that we're really excited to work on. So I also want to thank, I guess, in light of that, our senior team continuing to make this work a priority, even in this current business environment. So we're at a point with that work today. As Scott teed up and Mary mentioned that we thought it was the right time to get back with you and discuss how we're organizing ourselves around this vision and what you can expect as we execute this study and related efforts. So as we move to the next slide, looking at our agenda, I placed a picture of the Arboretum, or I should emphasize the OPPD Arboretum. It's at 108th and Blondo. Because the decarbonization work that we're going to discuss today, it's really a natural extension of what the public's come to expect of us. The Arboretum was open in 2004. It's only natural that here in 2020, we're working to become a leader in our community on this most important issue. So the agenda there on the left, we're actually going to take a step back. And I know this group, this body was obviously key in setting that strategic vision, the need for the initiative, but it's really important to kind of revisit that as we talk about the way we're organizing the work. The objectives of the program then that flow from that need. And then we're going to go into each of the project capsules. So we're going to look at those projects that Mary mentioned, and then the need to tie it together with the program as we implement that throughout the district, those four independent but very connected projects. We'll look at the timeline, and then as Mary said, get to any questions. As we go to the next slide, you'll see, as we discuss this further, I might say SI, it's kind of starting to get built into our culture here, meaning that strategic initiative, meaning it's one of those 5 strategic initiatives that was designed to really support that overall strategic vision. When the Decarbonization Strategic Initiative was announced last summer, we understood right away, and we even talked about it very clearly, as a study of our generation fleet, right? And we kind of got to work thinking about that immediately. And so even though that this SI, decarbonization, was announced before the changes to SD7, as kind of we went from that announcement into the fall and the changes to Strategic Directive 7 in October, then were discussed and approved in November. Those changes really crystallized and broadened this SI scope, this initiative scope, because it's clear that this issue is bigger than our generation fleet. It's bigger than us, and it encompasses, it's a lot more broad, and it's outlined in those changes to SD7. So you can see here an excerpt of SD7, and this isn't the entire strategic directive. The entire strategic directive really does, it really does kind of drive the way we're thinking about it. But these items in particular kind of highlight the fact that it's bigger than just our generation fleet. Right? That first item, that we're going to conduct all of our operations, including building services and transportation, in a manner that strives for the goal of net zero carbon production by 2050. And the next one is around our customers, right? We're going to engage customers and stakeholders, promote, it's very action verbs here, promote energy conservation and efficiency and minimize environmental impact. Then that last one, the word advocate, right, jumps off the page to me. We're going to advocate and educate local, state, and federal governments to protect and advance OPPD's environmental interests. So the objectives outlined here, as we move to the next slide, the objectives that flow out of this need for initiative, as that first bullet mentions. Go to the next slide. That first bullet on the next slide, Mo. Thank you. As that first bullet mentions, it's really about developing actionable pathways to make progress towards that goal. But it's pathways, and yes, in our energy portfolio, and we're going to talk about that in the way we generate electricity. But it's also pathways with our customers and with our community in the way that we think about our product plan. And it's also pathways to reduce our internal non-generation carbon profile, to really gain a leadership position in the community by the way that we change our own behaviors. That second objective really speaks specifically to product development efforts. The third objective speaks to our internal efforts. As we gain visibility to our emission profile, this objective is to build the value of decarbonization into the way we do business. We might change some of our internal processes, some of our internal evaluation tools might be considered because we have new information on the way that we're looking at our internal emissions profile. We'll have visibility to that, and so we may change some of the ways that we evaluate work internal, some of the ways we evaluate our vendor relationships. All of that is only possible when we have some visibility to our. Am I still with you?
You're back.
Okay, I got a note that my VPN disconnected, so perfect timing. But if I'm with you, I'm just going to continue. That message is still on my screen, but I'm going to leave well enough alone and not touch it. So the fourth and the fifth objectives reflect our desire to lead the community and our customers. We really expect our efforts at education to help us lead the way and help us in these two objectives. To accomplish these objectives, we've organized the program, as Mary said, into these 4 projects: energy portfolio, internal operations, customer, community. We'll talk about each of these distinct, but again, very connected efforts. So if we can go to the next slide. As I said before, the first project, and it's out in front in some ways because it was announced early, and it's easy to understand, and obviously it's the lion's share of our emissions. It's focused on developing the strategy, the roadmap again, that we need to achieve net zero by 2050. Specifically, though, looking at our generation fleet. So you'll notice there in the summary scope statement, the phrase eliminate or significantly reduce. And just want to be clear, that isn't intended to be a challenge or in some way step back from that commitment to net zero. Instead, though, it really speaks to the fact that we're focused on pathways to reduce emissions between now and then as well. But as you can see, not in a vacuum. It's important that we do that while we maintain our system resiliency and, of course, while we manage cost. And so then what we have is a very complex but a very important really math exercise to simplify, right? Solving for potential scenarios that we can make decisions around that minimize emissions and cost impact while maximizing resiliency as time marches towards 2050 and beyond. Power with Purpose focuses on solving our near-term needs, but it also sets the starting state for our decarbonization models, and we're learning a lot along the way. But before we kind of move into that, I want to point out in the milestones and deliverables box you see up in the upper right, that first deliverable is a selection of an external oversight committee. And we're excited about this because we gained tremendous value as an organization from the oversight committee that was involved in decommissioning. And so kind of thinking about that model and how we're going to utilize that, we plan on here this summer yet identifying those particular experts in their field that can make sure that we're absolutely going after the best available technologies, the best available thoughts, kind of that cutting edge stuff on how we can actually get there. And so we're excited about having that formed. So again, we're developing the tools and the processes. I want to talk to you a little bit about the idea of pathway in the context of energy portfolio. You can see I called out there a pathway is a set of resource decisions over time that achieves the desired outcome. But as we've discussed already, we really have 3 desired outcomes that we're balancing here. And again, not just at the end, but through the transition in our energy portfolio. So to give you an idea of how we're talking about this, if you can go to the next slide there, Mo. here's a visualization that shows what truly is a really natural and relatable concept, but it's got enormous mathematics and modeling implications. Each of those nodes is a portfolio of generation. And so naturally, as you know, with any sort of problem over time, as we make decisions in the near term, that opens up some options. It also closes some doors for future decision making. So as we work through this, there may be some very near-term recommendations that kind of prove out and rise to the top, prove out to be beneficial in every scenario that we model. And so we'll have a little more clarity in the near term. But further out recommendations, naturally, right? Because we're talking about technology that is just emerging, or talking about technology that we may not know or understand yet in some ways. But as we get further out, those recommendations may be more abstract. As indicated here, though, the idea is to produce a study with actionable information on reducing carbon in the near, intermediate, and in-state terms. I'll call that the 2050 term. Again, though, while maintaining top-notch resiliency and minimizing cost. So moving to the next slide, this effort requires a commitment of resources, though, from across the district. And this isn't even all. This is just what we're calling our core teams. You can see the advisors there in bold of each work stream. It's shown, and again, this is in addition to what we'd really consider part of the team, that oversight committee that's going to provide those technical guideposts, perhaps. In addition to our project manager, that Colton Kennedy that Mary mentioned. So the idea isn't to go through each of these names, but it is to give you an idea of the breadth of this effort and the commitment of the organization. The stakeholder team is shown here in your bottom right, and it's shown as part of this project because that is how it was originally organized. But this team's engaged in support of the entire program, and we'll talk a little bit more about stakeholder. I know we've already discussed that a little bit, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. So moving to the next slide, internal operations is that second project. The project manager there, Jessica De La Torre. This project is really focused on creating that emissions profile for OPPD enterprise-wide. And so you see the greenhouse gas protocols, we're learning a lot about that because it's important to us that the way we go about this is repeatable and it's transparent and it's to a standard. And so we're really diving in. Jessica's doing a great job of diving into the greenhouse gas protocols. But it's not a one-shot thing. We're going to build our processes. The next objective of this is really to build the processes so that it's repeatable on a yearly basis and transitioned into the business. And so we're starting to work closely with the sustainability group that's being stood up right now in Lisa's area, and working with where would this lie long-term, kind of post-initiative. Along the way, as we understand our emissions profile better, there may be some projects that naturally kind of float to the top. And so this project's going to take the lead in initial scoping of those, characterizing those as we identify our largest non-generation emission sources. And then I mentioned this earlier, but it's an important part to me. The fact that as we gain visibility to our emissions profile and we understand what our business looks like in this regard, there's going to be opportunities to perhaps change the way we view our business process-wise. And so we're going to be looking for those opportunities. It may be in our financial analysis of projects that will have a value of decarbonization built into that. Or again, it may be in the way that we evaluate our vendors. Those are all things, just out on the table that we can't go after until we truly have visibility and a consistency in the way we talk about value to decarbonization. So the greenhouse gas protocols is going to form the basis for how we go about that. It's standardized, it's respected. The next slide as we move to that. This is just to give an overview, this next slide, an overview of the, if I'm going to summarize the greenhouse gas protocols into one slide, this would be it. So that thinking about emissions, they build three buckets. Scope 1, there's your direct emissions. So this would naturally be our generation. It would be our vehicle fleet. Scope 2 would be everything related to our building consumption, and obviously that would apply not just to OPPD, right? That applies across industries. And then Scope 3 is really the universe of other potential impacts to carbon footprint, and you can see there's both upstream and downstream implications. Upstream, maybe business travels identified there. employee commute. I also like to point out, just because of the irony of it, that there's a transportation component, right? So the carbon impact of the trains that bring coal to the plant. It's not the coal itself, but the impact of the fuel used of the trains to bring the coal to the plant. You can see there is in scope 3 upstream. Let's move to the next slide. That bottom panel on the next slide. This shows how we're starting to think about the emission sources here at OPPD specifically. This isn't exhaustive, but it's also not set in stone. These are things that are naturally part of our business. And so there's a lot of questions and a lot of work to be done to identify both operational and organizational boundaries, and also testing for relevancy of each of these items. But this gives you a good idea of where we're starting. Our transportation fleet, naturally, scope 1. Our building consumption, again, naturally, the electricity use of our buildings, gas, other scope 2, T&D losses, scope 2, and then a host of scope 3 items that would be natural really to any corporation for the most part. That upstream transportation piece that I mentioned. And then purchase power, we have to be really thoughtful about the way we view our purchase power agreements and how those may or may not fit. So there's a lot going on there, a lot of work left to be done. This work is organized, though, with an environmental team in the lead, with Jessica as the project manager. And then they're going to go out to each of these emission sources that are identified, work with a subject matter expert in that area to really define where that data is, how can we make it repeatable, what support do we need process-wise, and so we can become an expert in our own data. The milestones and deliverables, we're focused on getting a base year inventory complete this calendar year. And so that's kind of the near term. And part of that then is documenting the repeatable process that we'll use into the future. And next year will be our first opportunity to try it on kind of as a repeat process. So we'll, within the first 2 quarters of 21, our goal is then to have that first repeat inventory of the year 2020 done. And then by the end of next year, the goal then is to kind of have more of a formal scoping of potential projects that could impact and actualize some reductions in our carbon around what we're learning in the profile. Moving to the next slide, the customer project is run by Paul Fortney. This is all about customer side. Create and owning a product strategy, and really the key here is aim for a partnership between the customer's desire and OPPD's decarbonization goals. And so there's an education piece that this project will work hard on. One of the things I want to focus on here is it's not just a one shot and done kind of thing. This isn't a static issue. And so throughout the projects, we're focused on building into the business the processes that can then be agile and reflexive of changes without this value of getting lost in the future as the initiative perhaps then builds the processes into the business. So to that end, we're looking at the product prioritization framework. We have a really robust process in the product development area that evaluates projects. We're going to look at that and kind of calibrate it, make sure that what we've learned from the greenhouse gas protocols, the greenhouse gas project accounting, that we're using that to inform how we score, for lack of a better word, those projects even against each other, so that the prioritization of projects is done in a really thoughtful and methodical way. An outcome of this is going to be, though, a product strategy, a roadmap, as we mentioned before, to meet both the customer and OPPD decarbonization goals. And it'll have an acceleration plan. So this will be, if we were going to extract it from the process and we very decisional, we made a really purposeful decision around that this is the resources that it would take, and we would want to have eyes wide open on that. And then again, to build it into the business, to ensure that we can track actualization of carbon reductions through a in-place process on the back end, so after a product is implemented. So you can see all the resources that's going to take. The main deliverables there, we're going to have the system or the prioritization model, we're going to have that reviewed and documented and aligned by the end of 2020. And by the end of first quarter of 21, expect to have that product portfolio complete. So moving to the next slide, we'll talk about community. Russ Baker is the project manager for this. And as we've thought about this portion of the work, the language in ST7, again, it really pops off the page that we saw earlier. We're to be advocates. So to that purpose, we want to be intentional leaders on this issue, be the trusted influencer in the room, to look for true opportunities to collaborate toward this shared goal. In the same way as the customer project, obviously there's a lot of overlap there. One of the deliverables here is going to be documented positions for advocacy, and those it's important to us that those are based in kind of a consistent language and a consistent methodologies that we're looking at the other pieces of decarbonization. So again, I go back to the protocols and something that we can have on paper that defends why this effort or this position is a value to decarbonization or is not. So we're going to take those positions, we're going to identify specific community organizations that we look to play an active and educated role, setting policy and strategic direction. You'll notice the last item there. I guess I don't want to skip. There's large product implications as we work on the customer and that customer product plan. It could have a large impact to the community. And so these two are tied together, and that the community work that Russ is going to be leading up is going to be focused on strategies to support that product plan as it's necessary for those products that may have that broad impact. So to that end, that last bullet talks about potentially making a plan for a pilot community as it supports that product plan. Because we see some potential real opportunity to align ourselves with a community that's already engaged on this and wants to partner with us, that if we could broadly apply a certain product plan, we could learn a ton about broader implications to our system. And so the thought there, there's a deliverable there, making a plan for a potential pilot communities, again, as it supports the customer plan. We're going to have these documented engagement strategies by the end of 20, and we're going to identify targeted organizations in the third quarter. Moving to the next slide, talk about the need for the overall program. So as you understand, each of these projects are very related. And so the work has been organized under this overall program. The program is, again, focused on the initiative, and we understand it that way as we work it, but it could be longer lasting as we see value. So I'll just kind of draw your attention to a couple things. One is the consistent accounting methodology. I know I've beat that drum a few times, but it's really important. It's an important piece of tying all the projects together and to really make sure that we're all talking off the same sheet. Draw your attention to the assist and plans to operationalize life after the SI. This is again really important to me because this is the sign of success is that you work to change the culture, and the culture not just in the way that we're thinking about it, but it's built through our processes. That we've taken the direction in SD7 and we've really turned it into the culture change, and we've turned it into changes in the way we do business. Much of this work perhaps will then go to the sustainability group being formed, but we're obviously going to work across the enterprise to determine the right homes for different efforts as we determine what those are. I also want to point out this bullet on forming our leadership position. I mentioned that, but it's really key that the work we're doing in our own house, the work that we're doing internal on our internal operations, and also the energy portfolio piece, that really forms that leadership position in the community in an authentic way. And that will enable us to then be the voice of leadership that organizations turn to as this becomes important to them. Moving to the next slide, this is the resources. So we've worked through that charter process and identified, kind of scoped this work out, which is a large effort because there's still a ton of unknowns. But as you can tell, this is a huge effort for the organization. Roughly 20,000 hours identified in both 20 and 21, over 72 employees involved, and that does not count all the individual subject matter experts that we're going to go out to and try to extract, get information from that are real experts in their field as we identify emission sources and other support needing those subject matter experts throughout the district. Moving to the next slide, talk about milestones, and you've already seen a lot of these, but they're compiled here in one slide. I'll call out our headliner. I'll call it the energy portfolio study to be completed at the end of 2021. And that's there right there at the top. I'll also point out where we're at today. You can see, and just because of the way it works out visually, we do have those charters approved. You can see the charter for the energy portfolio again, though, that was approved back at the end of the year. And a lot of those resources are really involved right now on Power with Purpose. And so they're working hard at that effort, and they're also learning a lot from that effort on how we're going to approach decarbonization. But the charters for the program, the charters for the community and the customer piece, which are built into the program charter, as well as a separate independent charter for the internal operations piece. Those were all presented and approved, and so I have a lot of confidence in saying that the organization is aligned at this highest leadership level on what this effort looks like. You'll also notice the stakeholder lane shown there at the bottom. And up to this point, we've really been teeing up decarbonization as we've engaged the communities on power with purpose efforts. And those have been really important conversations. But I'm excited for the next steps of really intentionally engaging on this issue, on this bigger issue of decarbonization, and that's going to be coming up over the next couple quarters. You heard Lisa earlier mention the new platform, and I think we're all going to be really pleased with the level of engagement and the level of feedback and interaction that we can gain from that. Our stakeholder team's working on designing and implementing the best available tools, particularly considering our current virtual environment, to make sure our stakeholders in a very robust way. So with that, the next slide is really the wrap-up slide. Our goal today was to provide an update on how we're getting organized around this goal, and particularly how much of the organization is and will be engaged in helping us get there. So thank you for the time today, and at this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well done, that was great. Board members, go ahead and raise your hand or just hop in if you've got a comment or question. Rick, go ahead.
Well, this is terrific. I'm very excited to see this. I think it's laid out quite well. Mr. Bowers, you did a wonderful job presenting it. Senior management and everybody who's involved, my goodness. Thank you for bringing it before the board. The slide immediately preceding this one is the one that I would just that little asterisk down on the bottom. Very happy to see that there's going to be a regular check-ins throughout. I hope that we have, as Director McGuire has said often, we have a very engaged board. I think there will be ample opportunity for that engagement to be realized, and I hope there's a lot of back and forth. I'm looking forward not only to that discussion, but to hear what the community has to say about this. This is great.
Director McGuire, go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Jeremy. That was a great presentation. This enterprise is transformational to the entire OPPD system. Even though we're looking at 2050, I think in 10 years, we're not going to hardly recognize the company that is now than what it's going to be even in 10 years from now. It's really exciting. Now I'm saying, why did I decide not to run? Because this is really exciting. This is fun. Dang. But my only other thing is that I'm glad you mentioned the resources that are being extended for this. There's 71 personnel plus all the senior team handling this. And a lot of personnel, a lot of people that really have bought into this, along with the 40,000 plus hours. That's amazing. And is that just for these 2 years? Jeremy, can you clarify that?
That is correct. That's this really purposeful and targeted effort in the next 2 years to stand this up kind of across the district.
Yeah, thank you. Amazing.
Okay, Ann, thank you. Ann, are you complete? You good?
I am complete.
Okay, thank you. Director Williams.
Yeah, thanks very much. That is a great presentation. I think the graphics and the timelines are very helpful in understanding kind of where things are headed into the future. In particular, I think the separation of the generation from the other accounting under the greenhouse gas protocol is extremely important, because I think I've mentioned before, for a lot of organizations, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 might have some slight variation, but if you are a core part of the economic and community infrastructure like electric generation, scope 1 is dramatically different from scope 2 and scope 3, and our generation balanced against the emissions from our fleet or the building use would be very difficult to kind of compare on similar levels. And so I think the separation of those so that we can focus on, as you mentioned, Colton can focus on the generation side of things. And then the other teams, Jessica can focus on the GHG protocol and the accounting in other areas. And I think that's a great step forward so that we can understand successes in each of those areas. So the separation in different areas, the 4 different areas is great. I think, one second, I took some notes throughout the presentation here. There was a discussion on Tuesday, and from I think what was listed as slide 27, there were 3 different items that were listed, and it matches where it is similar to the mission of the organization, the affordable, reliable, and environmentally sensitive energy services. And what was listed there included maintaining resilience. And this was a discussion point previously, and not today, but I do look forward to a time when we can have some clarification of how in different strategic documents and in the vision and mission of the organization, we can clarify what we mean by the terms we are using for affordable and reliable and environmentally sensitive. But beyond that, as we see resilience appear so frequently in so many of these strategic plans and documents, I think some clarification of how reliability and resilience are interrelated and how they might be different and how we might meet each of those separately through these 4 areas and through other operations is going to be really critical. There were, let's see, there were, about 2 months ago, there were a collection of comments when we spoke about the decarbonization previously from stakeholders and from the public in a variety of different areas. And so I think the presentation today will be extremely helpful in addressing a lot of those questions that we received about very quite technical and specific areas, electric vehicles, grid integrated water heaters, all electric homes, on-bill financing. All of those are very specific things that we don't need addressed in these types of documents, but that have been mentioned multiple times by people in the past. And so I think helping to separate out where the work will occur over the next 2 years, so that when there are questions and comments and people desire to provide input, that we can help filter them to the right locations, I think that's going to be extremely helpful. And so I think a couple months ago, we told people, thank you for your input. There will be an update. This is a great update today. And I hope that some of the people who asked those questions were able to either listen today or are able to watch the video online later so that they can see the same information we've been presented, so they can understand where those questions might fill the 4 areas and through the timeline over the next couple of years. I think that's excellent. One final question. You mentioned that the Energy Portfolio Charter, and it's on the slide that's displayed right now, was approved in December of 2019. I think the term charter may not be fully understood, and if someone could help us understand what the term charter means and what that document or set of guidelines or whatever that is, how that will be implemented, and if that is something that will be presented to the board as a reference to help us understand the work that will be going on. And then beyond that, if that's something that will be made available when the others are also approved in Q2 2020, if all of those will be made available to the public, or how that information, the charter for each of these areas, will be understood by the board and understood by the public. And so if someone could help us understand that a little bit now and give us an expectation for the future on what the charter specifically means, that would be great.
Thank you, Director Williams. With regards to the charter, this debrief is really an opportunity to provide what we think is the most publicly digestible information as it pertains to the charter. The charter gets into more detailed specifics that really are important for internal operation considerations, and candidly might reveal some insight into our strategy and into our initiatives that we wouldn't necessarily want to make publicly available. So we're trying to create that balance of how much insight are we able to provide, and at what point do you retain some level of cover, if you will, with regards to the more detailed information. So our hope is that this provides you sufficient insight in terms of what those chartering documents are. If there are questions, however, that remain unanswered, please let us know and we can figure out how to incorporate them into future presentation.
Yeah, Scott and Eric, or Director Williams, this is Tim Burke, and I would just say the thought here is the board set the strategic directive SD7 around net zero carbon. This becomes the impetus for the management team to engage around our activities. Very similar to what Scott said. I think what we're doing when we say the charter was approved, the senior management team approved that charter, looking at all the cross-functional implications of all of these strategic initiatives as we move forward. These charters may change and adopt differently depending on what we find out in stakeholder input, in customer feedback, in a number of different things. And so our intent would be to share kind of the status, the actual status and activity of those charters and the implementation of these charters in presentations very similar to this, to the board and to the public. So you have the opportunity to see it kind of in a broad fashion and how we begin to execute it. That would be the intent on how we plan on sharing the information kind of moving forward. And very similar to what Scott said, there may be some very pieces within that charter that we don't want to share externally because of competitive nature or how it may impact the strategy going forward. So.
And so I do understand that, and I appreciate the clarification. I think the presentation to the public, again, very appropriate to not give more information than is appropriate. But I mean, is that something that the board, I mean, that we could talk about in a board meeting, and you know, we could understand the information that's being used in these 4 areas, so that as we talk about policy and our responsibility as directors, looking forward, that we can understand what senior management has decided is, you know, the kind of guidance for each of these 4 areas. Is that something that we could talk about in a closed committee meeting, or how will we be sure that that our work is supportive of the efforts that have been started by senior management and staff?
Sure. I think I understand what your intent is. So let me come back to the senior team, and we'll figure out kind of what a good mix of that may look like as we move forward. So I appreciate that feedback. So noted.
Thank you.
Yeah, and let me just add, I mean, if Eric, if this is a desire on your part to go deeper, it might be a one-off conversation for you to have. I mean, my perspective right now is that as described, the charters are pretty detailed and pretty deep, and you know, from a board perspective, we want to kind of stay a little bit more grass tops if we can. And I suspect that I'm going to trust that the information we're getting today is probably exactly what we need to get. But by all means, I mean, go for it. And if you want to go deeper, I think, you know, like, proceed as you see fit.
Sounds good. I'll look forward to following up with Tim at some point when that's appropriate in the future. Thanks again.
Director Mulhoff's hand is up.
Yes, Jeremy, thank you so much for that update. And also thanks to the project managers. I know that OPPD has worked really hard over the last few years to develop these project managers and give them the skills that they need to be successful in this endeavor. I just want to say that the level of intensity with which OPPD staff is basically attacking this issue is impressive. There was a new study actually released on May 5th that said that for every 1.8 degree increase in global average annual temperature, about 1 billion or so people will end up in areas that are too warm to live in. And so I don't think that there's any more important thing that we do as a utility to strive to keep the lights on, keep our energy flowing, but also to protect our future planet. And so I think this is important work. I'm really appreciative of the level of intensity and the amount of work that's going into it, and thank the teams very much for their engagement.
Any other board questions? Seeing none, I'll just offer a couple. First, echo to the kudos. This is super exciting. Jeremy did a wonderful job of presenting it, and I can't even imagine the amount of work that's already gone into it. let alone what's going to be coming down the road. So great job to you and the entire team involved. I'll highlight one thing that I'm particularly excited about, and I know that I've had discussions with a few people originally. The community aspect of this to me is extraordinarily important, right? Like we're going to do what we need to do to get our operations tightened up from a decarbonization standpoint, but I like the idea of us reaching out into the community and being a trusted ally, an advocate, and doer when it comes to really moving the community forward. I do have one quick question. Jeremy, you mentioned, I don't recall the terminology, but the oversight committee, which, knowing what I know about how the nuclear oversight committee has added value to the decommissioning work, I'm kind of curious to hear maybe just a slight bit more about what y'all are thinking in terms of who's going to comprise that committee.
Maybe I'll take this one, Jeremy, if you'd like.
Thank you, Mary.
So I brought to the team the concept of a decommissioning oversight committee, moving it into the decarbonization for a number of reasons. You only know what you know. And if we can reach out to universities and gather some information from them, we can reach out to the environmental community and have them challenge us on our thinking. That's what the decommissioning oversight committee does for us. So we're looking for that same level of review and challenge on the modeling that we need to do for the energy portfolio, and as well as just bringing us new ideas and challenges so that we put together the best overall program, and we have that conversation with the community so that they know where we're headed on this and they're part of that conversation. I do think that this decarbonization oversight committee will be a bit larger, just because I think we have more key stakeholders that we need to really engage. And so Russ Baker and Lisa Olson are working with us to help us to create a list of people that we think would add value and that we could put in this position for the next couple of years to help challenge our thinking.
I love the idea. Kudos. I think it's fantastic. And I think to your point, there's no question that the expertise, intellect, capacity that we have internally is exceptional. No question in my mind. But those external parties are always really, really good to just kind of make you think just a little bit, right? And I think they're going to keep us on our toes in a really, really good way. So great idea. I love it. Board members, last call for comments or questions on this.
I do have one more comment, if I may.
Sure, of course.
I want to recognize Mart Sedke and her team. Jeremy went through our advanced leadership program, and what you're seeing today is really his hard work is put together with the program that Mart's put together. So I just wanted to make sure that we recognize Mart.
Thank you, Mary.
Absolutely.
Cheers, cheers. Okay, I believe I don't have the agenda pulled up. I've got way too many things pulled up, but I think
President's report, I think.
Yeah. So, tall order, Mr. Burke, to top that. But go ahead, take a shot.
Well, I'm between two wonderful things we're going to talk about today. You heard Scott, Mary, and Jeremy talk about the strategic visioning and the pathways to decarbonization. You're also going to hear Mary. There'll be a couple other folks on the line, Tim Euling and Ted Main, that are leading our decommissioning activity, and you're going to hear about them. I'm just the guy in the middle. The good stuff is on the outside of this. So, but I'm going to go ahead and give my president's report. Let's go to the next slide. And we're going to move through these pretty quickly. Not a lot of significant impacts here. A couple small outages, give or take. Certainly on Nebraska City 1, we had to go through some NERC generation mod testing and certification. In the COVID kind of world, we spent a lot of time figuring out how do we bring people in to do some of this work. And I think the teams, along with our operation folks, did just an exceptional job to bring them in, get through our certification process on Nebraska City 1. But here are the capacity factors for our baseload generation. I'm moving to our peaking generation as well. Really no significant items here. If you compare it to last year, we're significantly lower than last year. But again, at this point in time, we were deep into the flood impacts where we had Nebraska City 1 and 2 offline. And so we continue to have great performance and availability of our peaking generation. Moving to our renewables in the next slide. Renewable generation contributed to 42% of our retail sales with a wind capacity factor for the month of 42. If you compare that to year to date, renewable generation contributed to 41.6% year to date. Wind capacity factor for the year is 45.9%. So pretty significant impacts of our April renewable generation. A couple of our areas that we have around our community and the work that we're doing today is around Omaha Gives. And so May 20th is a fairly large program across Omaha around Omaha Gives, and OPPD assistance program, who's administering our energy assistance program, will be on the Omaha Gives page. If people want to give dollars to help support folks that need help with their energy bill, they can certainly be able to do that. It's a 24-hour online giving campaign. And so we would ask people to go to omahagives.org and search for OPPD in the Find Organization search bar and click on the blue button and give. It's just a great opportunity to be able to show kind of what's going on in Omaha and how we're participating in that. If you think about the 4 major impacts that are going on relative to COVID, certainly rent and mortgages, I would say health-related questions and impacts, as well as just financial concerns or issues that may be going on. And then the 4th one is really around utility assistance, still maintaining utilities at the home and being able to pay for those, and pretty significant impacts and an opportunity for our customer owners in the community to participate. I'm going to throw up these next 2 slides here, but it's really around the pandemic and kind of the impacts. And just to give you a sense of the work that we're doing, we have almost 900, over 50% of our employees working at home at any one given point in time. The other half are in the field and the power plants, practicing the best that we can around social distancing and monitoring ourselves as well. Just to give a sense on how many WebEx sessions, the board's been part of some of these, 8,600 WebEx sessions in April. Pretty significant, about 1.6 million minutes participating time. So we are continually doing our work, doing it in a very collaborative way, and it's been amazing. On the customer service side, a couple of things that really point out, our team is doing an exceptional job of getting to answering our customer calls, but also we're fielding a lot of scam reports that are occurring with our customer owners. And this is really important for us to just reemphasize. OPPD will not demand payment on a phone call. So please call our office, talk to one of our representatives so that we can provide the best information. We also, on those scam calls that we have received, 16 of those have been shut down through the external partnerships that we've identified, either through the FBI or local law agencies. I think that's pretty important. And then our facilities and our property folks are doing just work each day and during the day to make sure that we're sanitizing our facilities for the employees that really are required to continue to do that work, our critical infrastructure employees. Our supply chain, they've essentially procured over 360 containers of disinfectant wipes, 95 gallons of liquid disinfectant and sanitizer, and over 8,400 masks, and including fire retardant masks for our operation employees, because they need that as they're involved and engaged in electricity and for potential arc situations. On the next slide, we're continually doing our work. And so we conducted our generator testing, as I said before, on April 24th. And we've done that in a very timely manner to eliminate as much risk as possible. We had a great an example of one of our employees were contacted about helping Carter Lake schools really with some providing them kind of cable movement across facilities so that they could continue their internet. So students could essentially be able to log in and get their work, and teachers could do that as well. Just a great example of the work that we're doing in the community. And then obviously our warehouse personnel, they're continually working, keeping our employees in the field and in the plants and in our properties, whether it's cleaning or whether it's material to do construction or repair work. They're just doing some amazing activity as well. Last month I reported, we can go to the next slide. Last month I reported how the board and our leadership team and our employees donated over $33,000 to support the United Way campaign. This past month, our employees donated vacation. And there was over $17,000 of vacation dollars that were donated. Employees gave up their vacation. 2,100 went to area food pantries. 2,000 went to United Way. Another 13,000 went to a variety of different organizations. If you tie these two together, that's almost $50,000 the OPPD family has given to the community of their own sweat equity dollars from their billfolds or vacations that they won't take because they've donated them. Just a significant commitment of how we're impacting the community. Part of our environmental stewardship, if we move to the next slide, is around how we honor the community around our Treeline USA. You know, we've been named a Treeline USA utility for over 20 years in a row, and the Arbor Day Foundation gives this distinction to select public and private utilities for their commitment to proper tree planting and care. It's a great partnership that we have, not only with the Arbor Day Foundation, but also the National Association of State Foresters. And it recognizes good practices, how we protect the environment, and how we enhance Americans' urban trees. So our team just does an exceptional job of working with customers as well to make sure that we can trim trees and do them in a way that also satisfies customers' needs as well. And I'm sure the board may not be aware of this, but we were expecting. So if you go to the next slide, we have some Falcon Chicks. You can go on our OPPD.com or OPPDthewire.com and see our Peregrine Falcon and the new chicks that we have. The mom is named Clark and the dad is named Lewis. We've welcomed 3 baby chicks to the nest. This is a box that was really created by John Hanson, who used to be a vice president at OPPD, who's now retired, but this lives on. And so people can go online and see a live activity of what's going on with these Peregrine Falcons and look forward to us finding a way for these chicks to be named and engaging our customer owners in that. You know, we've had people from as far away as South Korea and Japan and Australia, from Israel, from all over the world engage around this, which is kind of cool to see. But it's part of our sustainability, environmental commitment to the community and certainly to this family here. So just great opportunity for us to share that across the world. You know, our passion to serve, if we move to the next area, we've always had resources for our customer owners, whether it's an energy efficiency video library, whether it's our Watt detector program. But we've engaged around our educational center for families. We have a piece of that site called Energy Kids, Energy Star Kids, and we have resources there for energy.gov that they can get resources, specifically STEM and energy industry news resources that parents can use for their kids, for their self-education at home or home education that teachers are using as well. So it's just a great opportunity for us and our passion to serve and how we're committed to help our families, our teachers, to get the appropriate information to share with students in our community and beyond. And last month, I talked a little bit about our state of the utility. We wanted to go out to 9 different locations and gather customer feedback and do it in a very public way. Obviously, we delayed that and the onset of COVID-19 and the sheltering and sequestering and the manner in which we're supposed to operate, part of the 10 rules I said before. We're now doing that via OPPDlistens.com. And so folks can kind of walk through the presentation. They can see the handouts. They can provide feedback to us in the survey. We would really like customers to be able to do that. We're going to receive feedback through May 31st. And it's just a great opportunity for us to find a way to engage our customers on what's going on in the utility and get feedback. And we've done a variety of different online versions for a variety of different organizations, a couple of Rotary clubs, a couple of community clubs that I've given the opportunity to provide this presentation, and others in the company have done as well. April 13th is Lineman's Appreciation Day, and we had the opportunity to really celebrate that with the men and women in our line department, but really across all of those that have those really critical skills to do that work every single day. And I'm just going to give you an example of what happened this morning, which is just so cool. We get an email from a mother that said, "Oh my goodness, you have some line technicians that are working out in the field." We had Rod Smith, who's a crew leader. We had Nick Weigel, who is a journeyman, and Jared Buckley, who's a journeyman. And these line technicians really went out of their way for a young neighborhood young boy celebrating his 10th birthday, where they all recognized him. They waved at him and said, "Happy birthday, Bracken." And it was an opportunity just for us to kind of live out our core values. The mother sent just a really glowing email in and thanked us for that, how it made the day for her young son celebrating a birthday on a cold, damp, cloudy, rainy day. So just a great example of what our men and women on the line side do every day with their passion to serve. And finally, before I turn it back over to Mary to talk about a significant accomplishment that occurs, it's just an opportunity for us to talk about safety. And this is about an individual who is a lineman who sustained falls from a pole while he was working at 68th and Mercy Street in Omaha. His name was Argel Harshberger. He died on September 23rd, 1953. He was 33 years old at the time and had been with OPPD for 7 years at the time of his death. He was a World War II veteran. He, while stationed as a cook on board a USS Nevada, Mr. Harshberger was injured when the ship was damaged by enemy gunfire and suffered a direct hit just off the coast of Okinawa. He was survived by his wife, Pat, his sons Daniel, and twins Bradley and Cindy. It's just an example of on days like this, on storm days, on any days where our employees are on poles, whether they're in the plants working on critical equipment, just for us to focus on safety and recognize these individuals who have given their life on behalf of our customer owners relative to the work that they do. So it's just a great opportunity to share that about Argel Harshberger. So thank you very much. That concludes the president report. But I want Mary to essentially talk a little bit about a very important accomplishment that occurred in our decommissioning efforts. And so, Mary, I'm going to turn it back over to you to finish this up and conclude this portion of the board meeting.
Thank you, Tim. Well, good evening again. I'm extremely proud to have Tim Ewing, our Senior Director of Fort Calhoun Decommissioning, and Ted Main, our Plant Manager at Fort Calhoun, share with you a current major decommissioning milestone that's been accomplished this week. Tim and Ted have been involved in the planning of decommissioning at Fort Calhoun Station since 2016. They were specifically chosen for their leadership skills to manage in difficult circumstances. It is only right that they share this with you. Tim?
Thank you, Mary. If we could go to the next slide, Mo. First of all, it's my honor to be here today to represent the hundreds of OPPD employees and the Arano TN project team that really put in thousands of hours to make this project successful, the preparation and the planning that was necessary so it could be safely executed. The top picture, and really we have several slides that are mostly pictures to take you through what it took to accomplish this project, to try to give some feel for that. We have been storing fuel in dry storage for several years now, but the capacity was full, so we had to add on to that facility. So you can see that in the bottom two slides. On the one on the left, it's the horizontal storage modules. Those were actually poured on site by the TN Arano team, And then the picture on the right shows those being placed into service or being placed into the facility so we could use those. We go to the next slide. While that work was being done on site in North Carolina, Tia Arana was creating the pictures that would be used for fuel storage. Each one of these pictures just shows a different snapshot of the process that it takes to build one of those things, a significant effort to do so. The picture on the bottom on the left shows a interior view of a completed canister. Each one of those canisters is capable of holding up to 32 assemblies. Since we had 944 of those bundles to move, we needed 30 canisters built for us. Slide, please. To ensure that we only put fuel in a canister that met all the quality requirements, there were several checks along the way with independent quality assurance individuals from both OPPD and Arano TN. So these kind of give a visual of some of the things they were inspecting, but what it doesn't show is the thousands of pages of documents that were also reviewed along the process before a bundle of fuel was ever put inside one of these canisters, making sure that it met all the quality requirements before they were ever used. I would also add that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has performed periodic and will continue to perform periodic inspections, assessments of our program, and they watched some of the performance of moving the fuel as well. And that oversight from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission will continue. Next slide, please. This just gives the look of the canister arrives on site and what it takes to get that canister in the plant so that we can start using it. It's unwrapped. It goes through another set of inspections to make sure there was no damage to the canister through the shipment process. That middle picture shows us uprighting the canister from the horizontal position that it comes in on the truck. And then the last picture there shows us taking that canister into the plant where it's loaded with fuel. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ted Main. Ted's our plant manager, and he was the management sponsor for this project. And he's going to walk us through what it takes to make one of those empty canisters full and safely store it. Ted?
Thanks so much, Tim. Next slide, please. As you can imagine, there's a great deal of technology that goes into a project such as this, but I really want to take the time to underscore the people parts and pieces. You heard Tim talk a little bit about it, and Mary as well. It is literally an army of folks, and absolutely exemplifies teamwork. Probably one of the most proud chapters in my nuclear career, working with these folks to complete this safely. It's just for their dedication to industrial, nuclear, and radiological safety. It's hard to put into words. Hopefully the pictures help tell the story. And that's our operations team in the large picture, the fuel handlers themselves, a ton of training, got oversight, and put 944 fuel assemblies into these canisters. And by the way, they're doing it from up on the surface, obviously, and that's 30 foot underwater. So did that all safely and event-free, and just super proud of them. The upper right picture depicts an assembly going into the canister, and the bottom picture is, of course, with the fuel bundle fully inserted. Next slide, please. Yeah, the next phase, if you will, once the canister's removed from the water, is to vacuum dry and weld it shut. If you look here, the people that are involved, although back to that technology on the automated welding, there are, I'll just say, times that people have to be up near the canister to ensure the welds are going appropriately, and as depicted in the right-hand side picture, the quality control, making sure that those welds meet the proper standards and specs. The yellow blankets that you see around that canister is lead shielding. It's one of the parts that are put in place by our radiation protection technicians to ensure that the dose for these workers that have to be near the canister that their dose is as low as reasonably achievable. And yeah, a lot of work from quality and certainly our radiation protection technicians and chemistry folks that do all the sampling. Next slide, please. Maintenance. You can't say enough about our maintenance folks. Focused here, there's a lot of equipment used, none probably more so important than HE2, which is the heavy equipment crane. A lot of hours, you know, probably hundreds, certainly hundreds of hours getting that crane prepared for the 207 days it would be used for this important evolution. And then, of course, performing all of the heavy lifts throughout the campaign. The picture on the left shows a new canister being prepared to take to the pool. The green blanket, if you will, covering on the top is for foreign material exclusion in order to keep that canister pristine prior to going into the water. Middle picture shows the canister actually being placed in the pool. And over on the right-hand side, you'll see a canister that has been filled that is in a transfer cask being loaded onto our transfer trailer in preparation for its journey out to the ISVAC pad. Next slide, please. Yeah, this will show the journey from basically where you saw it being down-ended. And our security folks, I won't say too much, but as you can imagine, there was a very strong security presence involved with this this phase of the evolution. Yeah, so Chris and his team did a tremendous job, and we were performing this work, as you can imagine, all hours of the night and day, and in many cases on the weekend. So their dedication is certainly appreciated as well. The upper left-hand corner shows the loaded canister with the tugger being taken out of the plant proper, moving downward. That is the canister on the transfer trailer on our heavy haul path. Moving over one shows a full canister actually being inserted into the horizontal storage module. And on the right is the rigging device putting the shield door, which is just the covering that gets bolted over the top of the hole on the HSM after the canister's fully installed. So that's exactly what that looks like. Next slide. I'll hand it back to you, Tim.
Thanks, Ted. As we've tried to show through these slides and these various pictures, is how a significant project can be accomplished safely on time with the right people on the project. Our concept has always been use the OPPD employees where they have the skills and training to be successful, then supplement that with specialty contractors. That proved out through this project how successful we can be, and it's the same recipe that we're going to use through the rest of deconstruction. The next two slides really close it out, and then I'm going to turn it back to Mary. A lot of the same types of pictures that you saw on the previous ones, this just happens to be the very last one. So as you can see in this picture here, everything from the basket serial number to the final assembly being inserted into the cask on the lower right-hand picture. And then on the next slide, we see the very last canister going out to the storage facility. So from the trailer that Ted showed before to the opening that goes through, and the picture in the middle where it's being inserted. And then in the upper right-hand corner is a really close-up picture of that canister inserted into the horizontal storage module. And then the one on the lower right is the final bolt being placed on that cover, finishing the project. And I would just echo what Ted said. This was all about people and their desire to perform, and we can't say enough about that. Turn it over to perspective.
Thank you, Tim and Ted. So this last canister got loaded last night. We wanted to thank and recognize the team. This has been a district-wide collaboration by more than 250 employees. I swore I wasn't going to get emotional. by more than 250 employees, including human capital, BTBS, public affairs, finance, and safety, to name a few of the support organizations. Everyone at Fort Calhoun had a role to play. Radiation protection, security, operations, maintenance, engineering training, regulatory assurance, nuclear oversight, and projects, along with our outside partner, Orano TN. I want to thank all these people and recognize the concerted effort that it takes to make this happen safely. I need to include in this thank you our Decommissioning Oversight Committee, the board, excuse me, Tim Burke and the rest of senior management. For their belief in the Fort Calhoun employees. For their belief in the Fort Calhoun employees, their support, as well as their challenges to make us a better team. The Fort Calhoun team overcame flooding and a pandemic, as well as more mundane issues such as mechanical failures and old equipment. The team is strong, they're resilient, they're dedicated to performing the decommissioning safely on budget, on schedule. A huge thank you and congratulations to the men and women at Fort Calhoun who have demonstrated an era of professionalism, commitment, and perseverance, and that will continue on through the decommissioning. They truly have performed today to define tomorrow. That's all I have.
Yeah, just a special, if I could, just a special thanks to Mary and her leadership, Tim and Ted certainly, but as they talked about the 250 people that, you know, as we began this journey, the board certainly knows this. You know, we asked you a year ago to move from safe store to deconstruction or decommissioning, and I want to thank the board for your trust and faith in us, for us to begin to move forward in this. As we have said before, this is a pretty significant milestone that is well within time, on budget or under budget, and as Mary and Ted and Tim talked about, incredibly safe from a environmental, from a radiation, from an industrial safety perspective. Our teams performed incredibly well, and so proud of them across the whole district. So thank you all for that. And we just wanted to end the management's piece of this to share this incredible accomplishment. So thank you very much. And I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman Moody.
Wow. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be together to shake all of your hands, to congratulate you? And I don't know that this is going to go over well, but I'm still going to give us an opportunity to pause and applaud, because this is exceptional work. So congratulations. I can't even begin to imagine the feelings you have right now. Thank you on behalf of all of your exceptional work. This is a huge, huge milestone, and your work has been impressive beyond belief. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to give my colleagues an opportunity to offer some comments as well. Director McGuire, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ted and Tim. Thanks so much for this. This is, I think a lot of people don't recognize the fact that not many companies have been able to do on time and under budget like we have. This was considered one of the biggest risks that the company could undertake. And so far, we have met every one of those milestones. At the same time, I think it's important to acknowledge not only all of those employees who are there right now at the plant, but all the employees who've served at Fort Calhoun Station since it started up back in the early 1970s, 73. And this milestone is probably very bittersweet for all those employees, as they know that no longer is there any radioactive fuel rods in Fort Calhoun Station now. It's in dry cask storage. And it's, I'm sure it's bittersweet for all those who have served so nobly at Fort Calhoun. And thank you, Mary, for spearheading this. You're a great leader. You've empowered some great people to do some great jobs there at Fort Calhoun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Director McGuire. Director Williams' hand is up.
I was fortunate enough to join the board relatively recently, and I did take a tour at Fort Calhoun Station, but only after the decommissioning had already begun. So I wasn't able to see things while it was operational. But even in the tour that I attended, the qualified employees who were there and the work that they had accomplished in the past while operational and through the decommissioning process that was underway was extremely evident, even from the tour that I was able to take. I think since then the dedication and the professionalism and the perseverance last year during the flood and now during COVID to, again, as has been highlighted, deliver this on time and under budget under extremely challenging circumstances is completely unprecedented and an accomplishment that everyone in the entire organization should be very proud of, from senior management to the project managers at Fort Calhoun to the rest of the employees who were flexible in helping to accommodate this incredible achievement. So again, I want to extend sincere appreciation to all of the employees who were directly involved and to all the employees who helped to facilitate this accomplishment. I can't imagine what it's like for everyone who has been there for decades, but I can't imagine where we are going in the future and how this will allow the organization to continue to be successful and define tomorrow, as the slide says. So thank you again to everyone. This is incredible, and I sincerely appreciate everything that has been accomplished and the work that will take the rest of the decommissioning to its successful conclusion in the future. Thank you very much.
Other directors, any comments?
It's Tim Gay. I just want to say too, the ability to use our own OPPD employees was just a great decision. Congratulations to all of you. Watching this whole thing unfold has been amazing. Just the camaraderie and working together. And Mary, especially congratulations to you and your team. I can only imagine how that feels to get that done, and we're very proud of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Gay. Director Bogner, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's just one word. It's so impressive. The work that you guys have done out at Fort Calhoun Station is just so impressive and something that our community should really be proud of. So thank you so much.
Okay, any others? Rick, I see your hand up. Sorry, there it is. Go ahead.
It's all right. Sure. I was going to jump in. The accolades are well deserved. What I really like best about this is not the high level of performance, which I really like, but the high level of performance that gives us confidence that transition is something that OPPD knows how to manage and to turn out. And so that should give everybody within the organization without great comfort that the team can deliver and is watchful of what's happening and can make changes and make them securely and make the correct decisions and execute. So thank you so much for giving us all the confidence, which we already had, but this is just a superior performance and gold stars all around. Thank you.
Okay. Any last comments? Director Mulhoff, go ahead. I see your hand.
Yeah, so Mary and Tim and Ted and to all the family really up at Fort Calhoun, kudos. And I know this was bittersweet. It's a milestone to be celebrated. But we have to look forward to tomorrow and all of the things that are coming up ahead, and for the Blair community and for everything that's going on in the district. Congratulations to all of you, and wish you well in the future.
Okay, last call for comments, directors. Well, hey, congratulations again. I know, I hope those of you that have been toiling away on this for years can step away and celebrate. It's a pretty major accomplishment, so congratulations. Okay, on that note, we are now ready for public comment on other items of district business. I'm impressed as always. Dr. Corbin has already raised his hand, and I see Laverne, you're in the queue as well. So we'll go ahead and get started with you. As a reminder, please first confirm that we can hear you, and then once that's the case, please share with us your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes. Dr. Corbin, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. First of all, again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to virtually participate in your meetings, as I've publicly said to you before and today, as well as in the letter to the World Herald. Congratulations on the decommissioning. The Sierra Club, by the way, I guess I'm supposed to say 1002 North 49th Street, and Vice Chair of the Nebraska Sierra Club. The Sierra Club promotes and enjoys the environment and protects it. And we appreciate the Peregrine Falcon, the Arboretum, the pollinators, and we hope to continue that. I participated by listening in on the committee meetings. There's a couple of things there that you talked about that I don't quite understand yet, but I guess they're internal acronyms that you're using. So I hope I'll find out about more of that in the future, and also hope that you look forward to looking as you do to work towards net zero. We would certainly like to continue to be engaged in that. Couple of things that we've done, we've supported, we plan on weighing in, as some of us already have, to the Sarpy County Board regarding some of their codes about solar. And we also have weighed in at Dakota County, who is going to have a moratorium on wind energy, and now there's a moratorium on the moratorium. So I think there's a lot of places where we kind of see eye to eye. Sometimes Sierra Club and OPPD can work together, as I think we've been doing lately. But we appreciate the fact that even when we don't always see eye to eye, that you're willing to listen. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Corbin. Thank you for religiously attending our board meetings virtual. Laverne, before all members of the public out there, you have two ways by which you can indicate that you'd like to make public comments. One is to raise your virtual hand, which is indicated on the right-hand side of the screen. And the second is to send a chat to the host and let our host know that you'd like to make a comment. Okay, Laverne, go right ahead, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to say congratulations to the decommissioning crew also. Thanks, Mary, for ending a 30-year anti-nuclear campaign. It's awesome that we can put this one to rest. And second of all, I really hope you guys continue securing the savings you're accruing by keeping the 900 people at home. And these meetings, you should take it off your front page as being COVID related. It's the reason we're doing this. No, you should be doing this forever now, because, well, you've made the capital investments. So the longer you continue this way of operating, because clearly 900 people can operate from home, the more it'll pay off. And now you have 900 people worth of space in your building that you can now start taking out walls and actually making offices large enough for the people who actually have to be there, so they can actually, physically distance while they socially connect. So I really hope you continue this. I hope COVID ending doesn't end the savings that I think you're accruing every single month. Now, I was talking to a person who said that this was like a raise because they didn't have to drive to and from and save tons of fuel, and they didn't have to constantly buy wardrobes and go to, and business attires and this kind of thing. And that they were essentially getting a raise by being able to work at home. So, and everybody's working at home for their health. So this also reflects on sick days and normal flu and cold that we always have every year. This all impacts the bottom line, and I hope that we can secure these savings for the long term. Plus, I'm really glad that you're doing solar. I really wish you wouldn't centralize it into a giant field of grass. Grass does not need to be shaded. Buildings do, our public buildings do, our city buildings do, our police buildings do. So they need backup. We have tons of building space that we could be putting solar on, so we don't continue eating up natural areas and keep eating up land. We need to use the structures that need the power, the buildings. Please make it throughout. Parking garages. There's a brand new park being put in downtown that's going to have a huge parking facility somewhere, I'm assuming. Why can't it have a solar covering? Why can't there be electric car chargers? Why can't you guys do these things also?
Seconds, Mr. Serene.
Thank you. So these are the things that I'd like you guys to focus on. The people not coming to and from work is already a huge contribution to your carbon footprint reduction. It's huge that people aren't driving to and from work. It's huge that they're not in that building every day heating and cooling. The carbon footprint reduction you've already invested in, I hope we can secure this permanently and not just because of COVID. Thank you. Have a good night.
Hey, Laverne, before you go, could you just give us your name and address, please?
Yeah, it's Laverne Tran at 49th in Chicago.
Thanks, Laverne.
You bet.
Mr. Ken Winston, we're going to go ahead and unmute you, and you are up. Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Ken Winston, and I'm appearing on behalf of Nebraska Interfaith Power and Light. And seems like every time I attend your meetings, you do fantastic things. So I'm just so pleased at all the great work that you're doing. I wanted to say thank you for several things. First of all, thank you for conducting virtual meetings. I was very impressed with the way that you've run it and the fact that you are allowing comments from the public. I think I'm incredibly impressed with that work. I want to thank everybody in your organization for continuing to provide reliable electrical service for your customer owners. I'm blown away by the progress that you're making on the decarbonization process. I'm going to echo all the kudos that your director stated, and also want to echo the praise for the great work on the decommissioning of Fort Calhoun. And then finally, I just wanted to particularly note Director Yoder's statement about how impressed he was, and I echo that about showing OPPD's ability to transition to new ways of doing things. So thank you all for the great work you're doing, and looking forward to hearing more, seeing the new directions that you're going in. Thank you.
Ken, did we get your name and address?
Ken Winston. I actually live in Lincoln, but I'm 4021 Terry Lane in Lincoln, Nebraska.
All right, thank you, Ken. I see John Pollock and Alan Vivolka. Just so you know, we've got your name on the list as well. So John Pollock, you're going to go ahead and go next as soon as we get you unmuted. Okay, you're unmuted. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. John Pollock, 1412 North 35th Street, Omaha. I would just like to echo the many kudos. Fantastic job, both with decommissioning and also with the the progress and institutional resources you're putting into the decarbonization project. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to be coming out of this. I get to do a very fast weather one. Normally we're at the height of the severe weather season in the next month, but the good news is that at least for the next 10 days to 2 weeks, we're looking at below normal severe weather activity, rather like we've had all spring. We have kind of a disorganized jet stream. Usually a lot of our severe weather is associated with a jet stream, so that when we have a disorganized one with a lot of little bits and pieces, it doesn't give us necessarily a high level of predictability, but it does suggest that it's going to be really tough to get a large severe weather outbreak organized for a while. And so we've got one weather system coming through in approximately a week. It's slow moving. It would have some potential for severe weather, but again, below normal. Then after that, it's too far to go out. And thank you for your time. This has been a long meeting, and I appreciate being able to attend virtually.
Great. Thank you, John.
Can I just comment? John, it's good to hear your voice.
Indeed.
Yep.
Okay. Alan Vivolka has indicated through chat that he would like to speak, so we could get him unmuted.
Okay, am I unmuted?
You're good. Name and address, please.
Alan Vivolka, 3719 Hamilton Street, Omaha, Nebraska. I was a little disappointed that we didn't have public comments after each portion of the meeting as we normally do. So I'll try to work backwards. I had a really nice thing to say about OPPD, but I might have to wait until next month because I'm going to run out of time. Okay, on the nuclear achievement, I think it was an achievement, and I would like to congratulate the district again for moving away from safe store and going to full decommissioning. There's no doubt in my mind that that was absolutely the right thing to do. And I would like to point out that as long as we have all that expertise, camaraderie, etc., available at this point in time, it's the best time to make the move to get that stuff out of the floodplain where it really doesn't belong. You know that you're on the outside bend of the Missouri River. Rivers move toward the outside of the bend. Sometime before that radioactivity is no longer a danger, the river will move through exactly where the waste is now. There's just no doubt about that, except for the timing. We all know that that will be moved. The plan is to move it. This is temporary. So we can practice for moving it right now by starting to get it uphill out of the floodplain, not the legal floodplain, the actual floodplain where the angle of the land slopes upward away from the river. The other thing I was going to ask about on the presentation of the decarbonization plan, which looks like it's great, is if someone would consider putting qualifications for those that will be on the external review panel out on the web somewhere. It's possible that people in the community could help locate appropriate members for that panel. I know that you don't want to publish the charter for internal reasons, but it seems like just a list of qualifications for those people on the review panel might help people in the community help identify.
30 seconds, Mr. Vivolka.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Alan. I do not see any additional hands raised. Host, do we have anyone else via chat that's indicated that they would like to speak?
I have no one else from the chat.
Okay, so let's go to our call-in users. I'm seeing 2 of them. So let's first unmute call-in user 402915. You're unmuted. Would you like to make any comments? User 402915, would you like to make any comments?
I don't have any comments.
Thank you. And finally, call-in user phone number 402830. Let's go ahead and unmute them and check to see if they would like to make any comments. You're unmuted.
Just to add my congratulations to OPPD for the massive decommissioning work. Outstanding, really terrific to see, and you deserve a celebration. That concludes my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you quickly give me your name and address, please?
Sure. Mary Spurgeon, 1712 Wayne Street, Bellevue, Nebraska.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, I do not see any additional call-in users. Please let me know if I'm missing anyone. I don't see any hands raised, and I'm assuming we haven't received any additional chats. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. We did it again. Great job today. Great job to everyone involved. Again, thanks to those that are behind the scenes making sure that this works smoothly. Great job. All right, everybody, stay safe. We'll see you again soon. We are adjourned.
Thanks, Mo and Lauren. Great job.